Welcome to this edition of View from the Bleachers. I'm Tim Jones. Here's a question. Do you know the distance from my house to the South Pole? Well, of course you don't. But I do. And that's because not long ago, I erected a giant signpost complete with weather vane in my front yard that displays the direction and distance to several far-flung places, including the South Pole. 9,549 miles, by the way. That's the distance from my house to the South Pole. I knew you were curious. For years, I've been fascinated by those rustic, towering poles with signs pointing in every different direction to remote locales like Timbuktu. Yes, that's an actual place. And maybe it's the wanderlust in me, or my long-held interest in maps, or perhaps I've just read too many National Geographic articles about the lost tribes of Borneo. Whatever the reason, I decided to plant one of these, poles that is, not Borneans, in our yard as a quirky conversation piece. Prior to this project, the only thing quirky about our house, quite frankly, was my wife's husband. So more about this somewhat misguided project on the other side. Welcome back. So here's how this project got started. I asked my wife if she'd be okay if I built one of these signposts and gave it a prominent location in our front yard. And well, to my amazement, she did not protest in the slightest. And even when she woke up from her nap and I asked her again, she was still moderately amenable. You know that expression, it takes a village? Well, I could never have completed this project without the expertise of several kind, some people might say gullible, friends who offered to pitch in. I like to think that they offered to help because, well, they like me. But in retrospect, it's entirely possible they simply felt a moral obligation to intervene for my protection and their property values in a project that had tremendous potential to go wildly off course. The first step was to round up all the materials. I called my good friend Jim, and I promised not to release any of the incriminating photos I had of him from last year's New Year's Eve party if he would just pitch in with this part. Also, Jim had a truck, something I consider extremely important when choosing my friends. Jim took the lead in selecting the perfect pole, 12 feet tall and 8 inches wide, and he showed me how to calculate the amount of lumber I would need for all the directional signs and how to cut it into 20 arrows with chevrons. But most importantly, he showed me how not to amputate my fingers while using his circular saw. Next came the arduous tasks of digging a 12-inch wide, 2 feet deep hole for the post, hauling the 120-pound post from Jim's truck to the hole, mixing the cement, pouring it into the foundation, and finally nailing 2 cross beams to support the post while the cement hardened. I did everything except for every task that I just listed in the previous sentence. Jim handled those. But in my defense, I told Jim he did an outstanding job. So I feel I demonstrated exceptional hiring, delegating, and coaching skills at this critical stage of the project. Then came the all-important selection of the 20 destinations for the signs. I chose some of the destinations based on their personal significance, like Miami, where I met my wife, and 2 cities in China, where our daughters were born. But some of the destinations I chose just because they sounded exotic or remote, like Machu Picchu and Pitcairn Island. I calculated the distance to each destination to within a mile from my house using a painstaking method I devised. Okay, I Googled how far is it from here to fill in the destination. Next was painting the letters. I have roughly the same artistic ability as a proboscis monkey, so I knew this part was going to be a real stretch for me. But then I found 2 resources that made this stage much easier. First, a set of broad point gel pens, much steadier in the hand than a paintbrush. And second, my friend Pam, who took pity on me and took over almost all of the lettering. Finally, the day arrived to attach the signs to the pole. Once again, I turned to my buddy and carpenter extraordinaire, Jim. We took great pains to ensure that every sign was pointed in the correct direction. When I tried to nail the signpost for the South Pole pointing straight into the ground, well, Jim deftly pried the electric screwdriver from my hands and he took over. And here's a life lesson, kids. Sometimes extreme incompetence is its own reward. Well, Jim and I worked well into darkness as he drilled the holes, inserted the screws, and checked that every sign was level. Yes, it was really hard work, but Jim never could have done it had it not been for me holding the flashlight ever so steady while he toiled under the moonless sky. In the end, it all came together far more perfectly than I could have ever possibly hoped. It looked so nice that my wife didn't even demand that I take it down immediately. Passers-by have generally offered two observations. Many make some snide comment about me having way too much time on my hands. Others, however, inquire, "Hey, how about you add a sign pointing to my place?" I'm sure. I'll get right on that, buddy. I have to say, I'm deeply grateful to all of my wonderful friends, especially Jim, without whose help this project would have gone south and probably have resulted in massive medical bills. And to those cynics out there who question the wisdom of erecting a garish 12-foot tall installation in my front yard, I will have you know that I'm reasonably sure that I have not reduced the resale value of our property by anything more than maybe $40,000 tops. Well, that's the view from the bleachers. I'm Tim Jones. And remember, if you would like this video or simply feel sorry for me, please click on the subscribe button below and share this video with your friends or anyone you'd like to annoy. And for more of my humor, just visit my website, viewfromthebleachers.net, and sign up for my weekly columns. Thanks very much for joining me. Bye for now.